You probably thought when you clicked on this video that I'm talking about this right here, the PSP released in 2004, or '05 depending on where you lived in the world. But you're wrong, because the best racing game console of all time is actually this one. The PS Vita, baby. Sony's unloved handheld that you probably stuffed in a drawer back in 2015 and forgot you even had until like 2 years ago when you found it in a box of fish tank supplies. No, just me? Okay, well this is actually my original PS Vita 1000 that I bought on launch day in 2012. And somehow it has survived all these years, across 7 moves, at some point being stuffed into a box of aquarium supplies and then not found until almost exactly 2 years ago when I was cleaning my basement and found a very dusty, scratched up, and slightly wet PlayStation Vita that I thought I had traded into GameStop years ago. So I replaced the screen and faceplate, the joysticks and the battery, installed custom firmware, and did everything else to restore my Vita to its former glory. And then began to appreciate it in a way I never originally did. See, okay, we do actually need to talk about the PSP first here. This was a monumental success for PlayStation. Their first handheld ever sold over 80 million units. They went head to head with Nintendo right out of the gate. And even though the PSP was almost twice as expensive as the DS, it was in many ways twice as good. This was the first time we had seen a major handheld that really tried to push the envelope when it came to specs and performance in order to offer a home console experience in your pocket. The PSP had a 4.3-inch widescreen, which was bigger than the original iPhone and years earlier, tons of expandable memory, Wi-Fi with an online shop, an internet browser that nobody used for anything nefarious, nope, not here, and a freaking disc reader in the back that supported their proprietary UMDs. This was a marvel of engineering at the time, and it was successful enough to spawn 4 more versions of the console. This here is the 1000, but they released a revised 2000 model with a new screen and more RAM, as well as a 3000 model with an even better screen. They even made a few more unique offshoots with the PSP Street, a slimmed down budget version, and the PSP Go, a micro-sized, almost cell phone-like PSP with a slide-out controller. Now this is also my original PSP from 2005 with some mods on it, and up until 2 years ago, I would have told you that this is the best racing game console ever made. Because, let's be honest, the Vita had a fatal flaw. Sony just didn't give a shit about it. See, the Vita was also incredibly ahead of its time. I mean, this thing is packed with tech. We got a bigger, higher resolution, touchscreen OLED display, 2 joysticks, a rear touchpad, front and rear facing built-in cameras, full 6-axis motion sensing, built-in Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and in some models, including this one, 3G support, so you could connect to mobile networks and play some games online from anywhere. We also got some pretty heavy hitters for launch titles. There was a brand new Uncharted, Gravity Rush, a new Katamari, a really good Rayman, and some huge racing games. Codemasters F1, an all-new Wipeout, a brand new Ridge Racer, an asphalt game made for the Vita, and a pretty fun kart racer, Mod Nation Racers Road Trip. But the energy started to die down pretty much immediately after the Vita's launch. The PSP, across its entire lifespan, had 6 Need for Speed releases, and the Vita only got 1. The PSP had both Midnight Club 3 and Midnight Club LA, while the Vita was left with nothing. The PSP got 2 Wipeout games, and the Vita only got 1, sort of, we'll get back to that. The PSP got Test Drive Unlimited, like essentially the full game, and again, the Vita was left in the dust. The PSP even got its own offshoot of the Tokyo Extreme Racer series called Street Supremacy, and its own Gran Turismo. And should I mention Burnout Legends and Dominator for the PSP, where the Vita again got shafted? I mean, why wasn't Paradise on this thing? Okay, so why am I even trying to make the argument that this Vita is a better racing game console than the PSP? Well, the Vita is a PSP. Yeah, so you can play the PSP's entire game library perfectly on the Vita, with a bigger, better screen, better performance, remappable controls, custom color filters and anti-aliasing options, and overclocking support. The wizards over at PlayStation made this thing fully backwards compatible. There is literally just a PSP packaged inside every Vita. And it's not sketchy, half-functioning emulation. This is first-party native compatibility that can be fully unlocked and accessed with something called Adrenaline. Now, this does involve putting custom firmware on your Vita, but it's a super easy process these days, and once done, you have legitimately 3 consoles in your hands. Oh, sorry, did I say 3 when you expected me to say 2? I must have forgotten to mention that the Vita also natively plays PS1 games through Adrenaline. That means Ridge Racer Type 4, Gran Turismo 1 and 2, the first 3 Wipeout games, a bunch of classic NFS games like High Stakes and Porsche Unleashed, and way more. Now, is it a bit of a cop-out to say that the Vita is only the best console for racing games because it's actually a PS1 and PSP, which were actually some of the best consoles for racing games? Sure. But listen, you get the entire PS1 and PSP libraries and the entire small but still valuable PS Vita library in a beautiful, sleek device that fits in your pocket and plays all these games natively with no issues. And I know you could just say, oh, well, the Steam Deck is actually the best racing game console because it can do all that and play PS2 and Xbox and PC games. And yeah, I hear you, but this ain't fitting in my pocket. It's a big, bulky, and sometimes very noisy device that has to, in some cases, imperfectly emulate these older games. You run into the same issue with a modern smartphone. Sure, we have great screens and a small form factor, and emulation does have obvious upsides, but then you're still carrying around something extra like this to get physical controls, and still dealing with any potential issues that emulation can bring, especially for the Vita. Vita emulation just isn't quite there yet for a lot of games, so the best way to play them is still on a Vita. There's also something to be said for a sleek and simple solution, and that's exactly what the Vita is. Yes, you do need to install custom firmware to get access to some of these features, and need to be comfortable with sailing the high seas as well, but let me tell you, it's really easy to go sailing on the Vita, and once you figured that stuff out, the floodgates open wide. Everything is seamless, and it all fits in this amazing form factor. You know, there's an argument to be made that maybe the PS2 is a better racing game console because you had like the entire black box era for Need for Speed and some of the best Gran Turismos and so many other insanely good games. But I do think that when you're talking about the best console to play racing games on, form factor matters, and handhelds are amazing for arcade racing games. There really isn't another genre that fits this mode of gameplay better. It's so easy to pick up for 5 minutes to do a race, and then put down and pick up 2 weeks later without missing a beat. You never need to remember what quests you were working on or where you were at in the story. You don't need to worry about missing important dialogue while you're on a noisy subway or airplane. You just need to drive. Handheld consoles are meant for racing games, and the Vita is the best option out there. Let's dive a bit more into the insane library of games that's available to you on this device. And I want to start with PlayStation's own Wipeout. You can play the original Wipeout, Wipeout 2097, and Wipeout 3 through the PS1 backwards compatibility. They all run great. You can also emulate Wipeout 64 on this with an N64 emulator, which does work fairly well. And then you can play Wipeout Pure and Pulse through the official PSP compatibility, and can of course play Wipeout 2048 natively, which has an expansion pack to let you play a remastered version of HD and its Fury expansion within 2048. So this one handheld can natively play 7 out of the 9 main series Wipeout games, and can emulate one more, leaving only a single game missing on the platform, Wipeout Fusion. There's no other console out there that can do that, so if you're a Wipeout fan like myself, the Vita is a no-brainer. Let's turn up the gravity a bit though, and talk about some four-wheeled racing games. If you like Rally, the Vita actually got 3 entries from the WRC franchise. 3, 4, and 5. And then the PSP has just straight up World Rally Championship, which was sort of a spin-off game based on the 05 WRC season. And we also have a few other rally games like Sega Rally Revo for the PSP, which is one of my favorite rally games of all time. So there's plenty of dirt racing to go around here. But perhaps you're more interested in retro Japanese racers. Well, you've got the aforementioned Street Supremacy, Wangan Midnight, and Initial D Street Stage for PSP, and then access to, well, anything from PS1, like Toge Max, Option Tuning Car Battle, or some of the older TXR games like Shotoko Battle R. This thing is a treasure trove of obscure old racing games that most people in the US and Europe never had access to. Now, of course, I could just keep listing every cool racing game you can play on this thing, and trust me, I would, but I think that would make kind of a boring video, so I just want to rapid fire shout out Sonic and All-Stars Racing, a great kart racer for the Vita, Horizon Chase Turbo, which had a special physical release for the Vita in 2021, and is a phenomenal callback to the Outrun games, Juiced 1 and 2 for the PSP, which are both fun and look good on Vita. Again, the very good pocket ports of TDU 1, Midnight Club 3, and LA, the amazing Ridge Racer library on this thing, and of course, again, some of the best racing games ever made, Burnout Dominator, and Legends. I simply cannot overstate how impressive the racing game lineup is for this console, and I want to round out this conversation by spending a bit more time talking about Need for Speed. Like I said earlier, there were 6 Need for Speed releases on the PSP, and of course all of them can be played here on the Vita through Adrenaline. This means that with PS1 support, you can play Need for Speed 1, Need for Speed 2, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, High Stakes, and Porsche Unleashed. Then through PSP, you can play Underground Rivals, which was sort of an Underground 2 spin-off in an Underground 1 format, Most Wanted 510, the more linear spin-off of Most Wanted, Carbon Own the City, which is a completely unique game that borrows things from Carbon, but has its own campaign that in my opinion is the best story of any Need for Speed. And you also have Pro Street, Undercover, and Shift. Then the Vita got a pretty full-sized port of NFS Most Wanted 2012, and even though I'm a bit of a 2012 hater, I can't deny that the game is still great on the Vita. Now, if you really want to be a completionist, you can also emulate Game Boy Advance pretty well on the Vita, meaning that you can play the Game Boy versions of Porsche Unleashed, Underground 1 and 2, Most Wanted, and Carbon. And listen, they aren't great games, but you can still play them, and they are fun to check out. Ultimately, this is a handheld that gives you a pocket version of the best era of Need for Speed. Sure, I wish I could play the real Most Wanted, and it's hard to ignore how insanely cool it is to play a heavily modded, HD remastered Underground 2 on my Steam Deck at a locked 60 FPS on a big screen. But again, I'm just not putting this thing in my pocket for a plane ride or a road trip, or honestly for any camping trips that I go on. I always just bring my Vita because it's less weight, size, and honestly money to worry about, and is just as fun. I'm also going to take this chance to shout out the Vita's battery life. This thing is super efficient, and I can easily get 5 or more hours of gameplay out of it with a demanding game on pretty high screen brightness, which is long enough for any plane rides I'm taking, and I can charge it up for a weekend trip without even worrying about bringing missing a charging cable. Everything about this device is so well designed and well balanced right now. It's old but affordable and has years of support and a surprisingly massive modding community, but still new enough to feel modern and be reasonably powerful. Vita games can still look gorgeous. I mean, Wipeout and Ridge Racer both hold up really well on this OLED. It still has working Wi-Fi, so it connects to my home network without any issues. Replacement parts are available and affordable. It's just in this perfect sweet spot right now of being old enough, but also new enough. And to speak more on the Vita's mod support, to this day, there is a very active homebrew and modding community that brings over Android ports, brand new indie games, and plenty of emulators. I mean, I can play Mario Kart on this thing. And for the final cherry on top, if you weren't yet convinced, there's even a Vita port of Moonlight. So I can stream my PC games to this. I can play Horizon 5 on my Vita. I really just feel like I cannot fully express in a video how impressed I've been with this console since finding it again a couple years ago. And listen, it's obviously not perfect. The ergonomics are not great for anyone with even average sized hands, so you might want something like this. You are missing out on, in my opinion, some of the best racing games of all time, like Underground 2 and GT4, and yeah, the Vita's game library is not that impressive, but there are still a few heavy hitters in there. 2048 is my favorite Wipeout game. Ridge Racer for the Vita has a massive and very good soundtrack, and Sonic and All-Stars Racing is actually a super good kart racer that kind of goes head to head with Mario Kart. So yeah, the Vita's lineup isn't that big, but it does a lot to round out the whole experience. And that is what makes the Vita so good. It's not really the best at any one specific thing. It's not amazing at emulating your old favorites in upscaled 4K resolution. It's not going to bring you the best modern visuals or the most immersive ultra-wide sim racing, but it does give you a massive, authentic racing game library that spans decades and has hits from just about every franchise you have and probably haven't heard of. I have discovered so many new games and entire series because of this Vita, and have been able to relive some of my childhood favorites as well, all with a console that fits in my back pocket. Sony may have never loved the Vita, but I sure as hell do. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you in the next video.